Hello, dear channel viewers. Today, I present to you Pandora and the Eternal War Video 15. I hope you enjoy this part of the story. If you do, don't forget to subscribe. A small disclaimer, this story contains moments of violence and possibly minor nudity. But don't worry, this isn't an erotic tale, so those elements won't dominate the narrative. This episode centers around Pandora and her experiences, particularly during her time at the Helios Academy, a place deeply intertwined with the Hero Association. Without further ado, let's dive into the story. Pandora and the Eternal War, Video 15. Pandora leaned back in her seat, her expression unreadable as she played a round of Don't Get Mad against Reno, Makito, Tomoko, and Frank. Her patience was wearing thin. She loathed board games more than anything else in the world. How could people in such an advanced, futuristic society still cling to something as primitive as dice and little plastic tokens? It baffled her. Yet she played along, masking her irritation behind her carefully crafted emotional facade. In the background, a TV show played on a holographic screen, depicting a group of heroes battling an evil organization of villains. Pandora found the premise laughable. How absurd to create a television show about something that existed in reality. Villains and heroes were real enough in her world, but the show's portrayal of villains struck her as comically stupid. The characters on screen made rookie mistakes, loudly announcing their evil plans to anyone who would listen. Pandora smirked to herself. If she were a villain in such a show, she would never make those errors. She'd craft alibis, ensure her moves were airtight, and keep her true intentions shrouded in mystery. Her thoughts drifted further as she moved her token 2 spaces forward on the board. Her gaze flickered back to the holographic screen. Villain organizations, she mused internally. I could build an organization of my own, one where I stand at the center, promising power to those who bring me more of it. It wouldn't be like the nonsense on this show. My system would be efficient, logical, so absolute. She pondered her unique ability, Osmosia, and how it could be used to steal powers and redistribute them as rewards to her subordinates. If anyone dared to betray me, she thought coldly, my loyal followers would hunt them down, strip them of their abilities, or worse, it would be a self-sustaining system of loyalty through fear and reward. The underworld would flock to me in droves. Hey, it's your turn, Makito said, nudging her out of her thoughts. Thanks, Pandora replied, her voice polite but distant. She rolled the dice and got a 6, allowing her to bring a second token onto the board. Her gaze wandered to the snowy landscape visible through the window of the Helios Academy. If I extended the system to monsters as well, she mused, I could implement a point-based structure. People would hunt more monsters to earn points, which they could exchange for better abilities. Meanwhile, I'd keep the most valuable powers for myself, but I'd need to create a way to evaluate which abilities to keep and which to pass along. And there's the matter of training. I can't just start experimenting on anyone. It's too chaotic, too risky. Her thoughts turned to Camilla, her obsessive admirer. Pandora felt no strong emotions for her, but saw an opportunity. Camilla would let me practice on her without question, Pandora thought. She's too infatuated to realize what I'm doing. I just won't tell her what my ability really does. That should prevent any misunderstandings. As she mused, she absent-mindedly stroked Ruth, the small cheetah curled up by her side. A wild thought struck her. What if she experimented on Ruth? Osmosia worked on any living being with Arcanus, after all. Her attention was caught by a fly landing on her finger. Curiosity sparked in her eyes. Could she grant the fly an ability? Concentrating, Pandora directed a faint spark of chaos energy toward it. A soft pop echoed as the fly exploded into nothingness, barely louder than the sound of a cork being pulled from a bottle. What was that? Reno asked, glancing over at her. Pandora shrugged casually. Just a fly, she said, her voice dismissive. Kate raised an eyebrow, intrigued. A fly? Why did it explode? I was experimenting, Pandora replied smoothly. I wanted to see what would happen if I focused my ability on it. Rather than being disturbed by her willingness to test on a living creature, Kate seemed impressed. You can control your ability on such a fine level? Pandora didn't answer, letting Kate's curiosity wane as the group returned their focus to the game. But her own thoughts spiraled deeper into her schemes. There's still so much to do, she thought, especially with Camilla. I need to check on her progress. And once she's ready, I'll finally have the chance to analyze my own blood. The results will be fascinating. As Pandora gazed out the window at the clouds, an idea struck her. She began pondering potential names for her organization. Shadow Paradise? No, that's not quite it. Maybe something like Eternal Black Heaven? No, that sounds too over the top. How about Black Order? Still too ridiculous, she thought, frustrated. Her musings were abruptly interrupted when the projection in the room shifted to a news broadcast. The red and white striped border flashing on the screen signaled an emergency alert. Everyone in the shared apartment turned their attention to the projection, a heavy tension hanging in the air. This morning, at 6 a.m., the city of A on the continent of Seoul was attacked by a new type of monster, announced the news anchor, her tone grim. 17 D-rank heroes were killed, and 56 others were seriously injured. Among them, 3 C-rank heroes also sustained injuries. What is most alarming about this new kind of monster is their apparent lack of fear of death. No matter how many of them are cut down, they keep charging forward until they defeat their target. The nature of these monsters remains unknown, but their behavior does not align with typical predatory instincts. A moment later, the projection displayed an image of one of the creatures. It resembled a human, but appeared unnervingly lifeless and strange. As the anchor continued to speak, Pandora felt a chill run down her spine. The anchor revealed that every single one of these monsters had an identical energy signature. That's possible, she thought. Even hive mind creatures, no matter how similar, never share an identical signature. The only plausible explanation, as horrifying as it seemed, was that these creatures weren't individuals at all. They were extensions of a single entity, like a fungal network that sprouts from the ground in various locations but remains one organism. If true, Pandora realized the true monster wasn't the bodies they fought, but the mind controlling them. This theory was shared by other experts. Yet Pandora couldn't shake the creeping unease these creatures evoked. Their glowing blue eyes, silvery gray skin with a faint purple tint. It was enough to make her skin crawl. But something else caught her attention in the image. In the background, barely discernible, stood a figure clad in black and gold armor, observing the chaos from a distance. Pandora suspected she wasn't the only one who had noticed this mysterious presence. The room grew increasingly oppressive as the gravity of the situation sank in. The attack had occurred uncomfortably close to their location. The identity of the woman in the background of the image remains unknown. At the time of the attack, she was approximately 3 kilometers to the north. While there are some similarities between her and the attackers, she did not involve herself in the incident, the news anchor reported. The anchor went on to say that, at nearly the same time, there was another attack on a hospital, which resulted in 2 injuries and the death of a nurse. The attacker at the hospital was identified as an identical monster, though this one wore black and gold armor. Pandora frowned at the report. To her, these events were far too coincidental to be unrelated. It no longer felt like a mere chance encounter. Something deeper was at play. The rest of the day was relatively uneventful, save for Camilla calling Pandora to inform her that everything necessary had been arranged. Camilla told her they would meet just outside the Helios Academy. As Pandora prepared to leave, she walked past Tomoko, the quiet girl who had become somewhat of a fixture in her life. Tomoko hesitated before asking, "Aren't you going to wear something warmer?" Pandora merely shrugged. "There's no need," she replied, her tone casual. "I'm resistant to temperature fluctuations. Warm or cold, it doesn't really matter to me." Without waiting for a response, Pandora stepped outside, indifferent to the biting winter air. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she made her way toward the main entrance of the academy. Halfway there, a peculiar thought crossed her mind. What if she walked barefoot? Curious, she slipped off her shoes, letting the cold snow press against her skin. Though she knew it was cold, she couldn't feel it. The melted snow on her feet confirmed her body was still radiating heat, a fact that remained constant no matter the environment. To keep her clothes dry, Pandora used a quick burst of plasma energy, allowing the snowflakes clinging to her jacket and shorts to evaporate instantly. The energy cost was so minor that her natural regeneration replenished it faster than she could expend it. When Camilla spotted Pandora approaching, her expression shifted to one of mild disbelief. Dressed in a cropped white t-shirt, a sleeveless leather jacket, and short leather shorts, Pandora looked more like she was heading to a summer beach party than meeting someone in the middle of winter. Her carefree attitude toward the cold was almost unnerving. Yet, for Camilla, it only added to Pandora's charm. "Do you want to attract attention?" Camilla scolded. "You're going to stand out dressed like that. I know you're from somewhere far away, but here people dress for the season. Maybe where you're from it was always cold, or maybe it's part of your powers, but it doesn't matter. We're going shopping. My treat." Before Pandora could protest, Camilla grabbed her by the wrist and dragged her into a nearby store. Once inside, Camilla eagerly pulled winter clothes off the racks, thick jackets, sweaters, insulated pants, and handed them to Pandora. "Go try these on," Camilla instructed. Pandora, unbothered, began to remove her jacket and shirt right there in the store. Before Camilla could turn away, Pandora had already reached for her bra. Flustered, Camilla's cheeks turned bright red. She shoved the pile of clothes into Pandora's arms, pushed her into a changing room, and slammed the door shut. The force sent Pandora stumbling backward, her head smashing into the mirror behind her. She glanced at the shattered glass and then at the wide-eyed store clerk, whose expression suggested this was not how one typically tried on clothes. Once dressed in the winter outfit, Pandora stepped out of the changing room, only to be met by Camilla's exasperated glare. "What was that back there?" Camilla demanded. Pandora shrugged nonchalantly. "I'm not used to people caring about things like this. Where I come from, if you need to change, you just change." Camilla stared at her, incredulous. "How have you not been arrested for public indecency?" Pandora's response was equally baffling. "I've never had to change before. I've always worn the same clothes." Camilla's jaw dropped. "You mean to tell me you've never—" "Oh, I do wash them," Pandora clarified. "At night, I sleep naked, then wash my clothes in the shower in the morning. They dry quickly." To demonstrate, Pandora conjured a small ball of plasma in her hand. Both Camilla and the store clerk looked on in amazement as Pandora explained how she used the heat to clean and dry her clothes. However, the demonstration quickly went awry as the winter outfit Pandora was trying on began to smolder, then catch fire. Startled, Pandora stepped back, extinguishing the flames before any real damage could be done. Camilla sighed, more amused than upset. "Do you always destroy everything you touch?" she teased. Pandora tilted her head. "Not everything. My old clothes were much more durable." "What were they made of?" Camilla asked, curious despite herself. Pandora rattled off a list of exotic materials, most of which were completely unfamiliar to Camilla. But when she mentioned that her leather jacket was made from dragon scales, Camilla froze. "Dragon scales?" Camilla's voice rose in disbelief. "Do you even realize how rare dragons are, or how difficult they are to kill?" Pandora shrugged again. "Not really. My father or mother handled that sort of thing. I spent most of my time painting, writing stories, or hunting when I got hungry." Camilla could only stare at Pandora, speechless. As Pandora receives a lesson from Camilla, she begins to realize just how absurd her wardrobe choices have been, up until now. Pandora reflects that it's probably for the best. She didn't mention her t-shirt was made of unicorn fur. Camilla would have likely lost her mind entirely. Pandora is uncomfortably aware that her underwear is made from the exact same exotic material as her white t-shirt. Although she had more clothes at home, her home has been reduced to rubble, leaving her with only the clothes she's wearing. This leads to a rather awkward encounter. To the saleswoman, Camilla is the daughter of the world's strongest man, a famous hero, while Pandora appears to be just another strange girl she's never heard of. Watching Camilla, the saleswoman hesitantly explains basic things to Pandora, such as why one doesn't normally use high-energy plasma to dry their clothes. Pandora, to her credit, quickly understands and adapts. As they leave the store, Pandora feels strange, wrapped in a thick winter coat, and asks Camilla how she can even move in such bulky clothing. "It feels like I'll tear something the moment I move too quickly," Pandora says. Camilla, unable to comprehend Pandora's issues because they're so bizarre, responds, If you buy cheap brands, it's not a big deal to replace clothes multiple times a month. Camilla silently contemplates that, in an emergency, she could always steal money or lend Pandora some of her own clothes. Just then, Pandora abruptly suggests taking a detour. After making sure no one is watching, she dumps her newly bought clothes and backpack into a garbage bin. Camilla, slightly annoyed, approaches the bin, only to find her hand passing straight through it, as though it were never there. Pandora waves her along, saying, "Let's keep moving." As Camilla turns back to Pandora, she catches sight of another Pandora, identical in appearance, pushing the garbage bin down the alley. The second Pandora then follows the first around the corner and vanishes. "What was that just now?" Camilla asks. "I didn't want anyone to see where I actually put those things," Pandora replies nonchalantly. Camilla rolls her eyes. "The chances of someone watching you at this hour and wondering where you put your bags are almost zero. And the odds they'd follow you into this alley are even lower. And yet, you used an illusion to hide it?" she asks, her curiosity piqued. Pandora doesn't answer, and instead changes the subject, asking where they're headed. Camilla, still intrigued but unwilling to press further, replies, "To my hideout." When Pandora asks for more details, Camilla insists on keeping it a surprise. The two women trudge through the snow in silence for a while. Pandora's gaze falls on a snowman, and a flicker of disdain for the society of superhumans burns in her chest. This fake joy. Why do people believe they live in peaceful times? It's obvious we're far from peace, Pandora mutters into the void. It's because people cling to fleeting happiness to avoid despair, Camilla explains. Society is filled with countless problems, risks, and conflicts that could cost them their lives at any moment. That's why people live in the present and enjoy what little happiness they can find, never knowing when it might end. That's an interesting perspective, Pandora admits. But I still want to create a world where no child has to cry anymore. And if I have to become an absolute entity to achieve that, then so be it. If necessary, I'll tear the stars from the heavens to reach my goal. Pandora's sudden surge of determination catches Camilla's attention. Camilla, who has seen her fair share of extraordinary things, can't shake the feeling that Pandora's resolve isn't just empty talk. As Pandora finishes her declaration, she looks around, making sure no one else heard her words. The streets remain as empty as before. Camilla senses the faint tingle of paranormal energy from Pandora's abilities, likely used to obscure their surroundings. She notes how careful Pandora is with her powers. Having trained for years to detect such signatures, Camilla estimates the residual energy will fade within minutes. She knows how quickly a signature dissipates depends on how much power is used. The stronger the energy, the longer it lingers. Since Pandora's ability likely only affected sound waves, a low-energy manipulation, the signature shouldn't last longer than 5 minutes. If this goes well, I might consider giving you a one-time reward, something no amount of money could ever buy, Pandora says, a sly smile on her face. Camilla, her curiosity piqued, can't help but let her imagination wander into darker territories involving whips and skimpy leather outfits. Her cheeks flush as she nearly takes the wrong turn. Their path winds through dark corridors, side streets, and even a section of a sewer. Finally, they arrive at a hatch. Camilla enters a password and the lid opens, revealing a hidden factory hall. Pandora's jaw drops. Though she knew Camilla was absurdly wealthy and highly intelligent, she never expected to find a massive factory filled with advanced technology. Pandora, who understands technology about as well as a 5-year-old understands astrophysics, gazes around in awe. "What is all this?" she asks. Camilla explains that the factory used to belong to her father and was slated for demolition. She forged documents to claim the property and repurposed it for her own use. As she speaks, Camilla suddenly remembers a particular room containing things she absolutely doesn't want Pandora to see. She hopes to steer Pandora away from it effectively. It would be beyond embarrassing otherwise. "As you didn't specify what kind of substance you wanted me to analyze, I brought in a few extra samples to work with," Camilla says as she shows Pandora her lab. Pandora pulls out a small vial containing a peculiar violet substance. She hands it to Camilla and warns, "This substance could be extremely toxic, maybe even radioactive." Camilla looks at Pandora, unsure if this is meant as a joke or not. But Pandora's expression is completely serious, leaving no doubt about her intentions. Camilla can't fathom why Pandora would carry something potentially radioactive without proper safety precautions. Deciding it's better not to ask any questions, Camilla keeps her thoughts to herself. However, Pandora answers her unspoken concerns anyway. "It's not toxic or radioactive to me," Pandora explains. "But it could be lethal to anyone else." Camilla doesn't take chances and immediately implements the highest safety protocols. She begins by testing the substance for radioactivity. Nothing. Then she searches for harmful effects or signs of violet energy, which could indicate chaos energy. Once she finds no signs of contamination or radiation, she concludes that, at least on the surface, the substance isn't immediately dangerous. When she places a single drop of the liquid onto a Petri dish and examines it under the microscope, what she sees takes her breath away for a few moments. What lies before her is undoubtedly blood, but unlike anything she's ever encountered. Instead of red, the blood is violet, coursing with a faint trace of microscopic violet energy. It appears as though the cells are under immense energy pressure, constantly breaking apart, dying, and reassembling themselves. And as if that weren't strange enough, Camilla notices the blood-absorbing fungi and viruses that had been on the surface of the Petri dish. The blood seems to consume everything around it. To Camilla, the cells behave more like a virus or bacterium than ordinary blood cells. She cannot even begin to fathom the origin of such blood. Its properties are contradictory and overwhelming. "What have you found?" Pandora asks. "This is blood," Camilla replies. "But it has so many bizarre properties I can't fully understand. Where did you get it?" "I got it today," Pandora responds nonchalantly. "Did you notice anything else?" Camilla peers into the microscope again. "It looks like the cells are infused with some kind of violet energy," she says hesitantly. "But it doesn't seem like chaos energy. Chaos energy would normally be harmful." After half an hour of further tests and analysis, Camilla reaches a chilling conclusion. The substance must indeed contain chaos energy. None of the known forms of energy are measurable in the sample, and chaos energy is the only one that consistently evades detection. "You're correct, Camilla," Pandora says, her voice calm yet decisive. "And now I'll tell you the truth. This is my blood." Before Camilla can respond, Pandora places her hand on Camilla's head, her fingers running through Camilla's hair for a moment. Concentrating, Pandora activates her Chaos Arcanus, Asmosia, but uses it in reverse. In that instant, Pandora transfers two abilities to Camilla: friction neutralization and focus. "What on earth was that?" Camilla exclaims, bewildered. "I've just made an investment in you, my dear," Pandora explains. "My ability, Asmosia, allows me to steal powers from others, but when I reverse its use, I can gift abilities instead. This makes you my subordinate." For a moment, the two of them lock eyes. The intensity of the moment only deepens Camilla's admiration for Pandora. To Camilla, Pandora seems even more like someone destined to fulfill the prophecy. Everything begins to make sense. Why the Oracle would proclaim something so drastic about Pandora. The prophecy repeats in Camilla's mind like a whisper carried on the wind. When the traitor is falsely slain, the child of chaos will tread a path paved with corpses. And when the child of chaos gazes upon the river of time, all shall be lost. Pandora breaks the silence. "I hereby appoint you as my assistant in all things scientific and experimental." "Stop looking so serious. I'm just getting started as a supervillain. I'm still working on my speeches, okay?" Pandora quips, lightening the mood. As the tension subsides, Pandora reflects on her true motives for gifting Camilla these abilities. On one hand, she's curious to see how Camilla will react to the new powers. On the other, she wants to observe how long it takes Camilla to adapt to these F-rank Arcanus. Lastly, there's an additional layer of strategy. Should Camilla ever betray her, however unlikely, no one would trust someone who had already accepted Pandora's powers. An idea strikes Pandora. She decides to mislead others into believing her hands are essential for stealing abilities. That way, if her hands are ever severed in the future, her enemies will face an unpleasant surprise when she continues to steal powers using her feet, or even other means. The only real requirement is skin contact. By perpetuating this falsehood, Pandora hopes to make it appear as though her ability is rooted in paranormal power. This could deceive the hero Null, whose power-neutralizing ability might then fail to counter her completely. Now it really makes sense why you wanted me to create a list of heroes and villains, says Camilla. Yes, I want to have some candidates whose abilities I can steal, says Pandora. Why are you turning so red? Asks Pandora as she notices Camilla's behavior. I just find it incredibly beautiful that you trust me so much. You can rely on me. I won't betray you. It must be fate that we met. We complement each other so well. I'll help you find candidates to steal their abilities, and you'll grow stronger. Together, we can take revenge on those we want vengeance on. I assume you want revenge against the Hero Association. May I ask why you want revenge against them? If my guess is correct, asks Camilla. I'll tell you, as long as you don't mind me occasionally asking whether you've told anyone my secrets. I know it might be unnecessary, but I can't stop myself from being cautious, says Pandora honestly. When Camilla says she doesn't mind, Pandora begins to tell her story. She deliberately leaves out key details, like the race her mother belongs to and the fact that she herself is a vampire-human hybrid, something that shouldn't even exist. Pandora explains that she is the daughter of a deserter from the war and a woman from the wilderness. She says her mother came from the jungle, and her father was a hero whom Camilla should recognize. My father's name is Elias Lincolnstein, says Pandora, leaving the statement hanging in the air. At that moment, Pandora herself isn't entirely sure why she trusts Camilla. It could be because they are on the same wavelength, and because Camilla seems much more unhinged than she is, at least when it comes to her feelings. Beyond her lie detection abilities, Pandora senses that Camilla is obsessively in love with her to an extreme degree. While they talk, Pandora sits down on an office chair and pours herself some orange juice from a machine. She takes a sip as Camilla begins to share her own backstory, explaining how her father had forced her into training for as long as she could remember. The constant pressure to become one of the strongest heroes with her gravitational manipulation ability had been a tremendous burden on her. Camilla reveals that the marriage between her father, Theodore, and her mother, Sarah, had been, to some extent, arranged and transactional. Theodore had been so obsessed with having powerful offspring that he essentially paid Sarah's family to marry her. Camilla explains this practice of ability marriages. Formal unions arranged to ensure that the children born would be as powerful as possible. Hearing this, Pandora feels a burning hatred in her gut for the society of superhumans. The idea of such cruel practices, like ability marriages, also known as arcanist marriages, infuriates her. Superpowers, commonly referred to as arcanists, were the center of such arrangements. That's messed up. Seems like both of us had pretty shitty childhoods. Well, my parents were murdered, and your dad treated you like crap. Honestly, I totally get why you'd want to kill your father, says Pandora casually. Camilla's demeanor turns dark as she explains that she doesn't just want to kill her father. She wants him to suffer. She wants him to understand what he put her through and repay him for everything he did to her and her siblings. As the conversation shifts back to Pandora's goal of founding an organization, Camilla expresses that the idea is quite clever. Pandora plans to recruit people and lure them in with the promise of power. The system Pandora envisions is inherently self-reinforcing. She would act as the core, stealing abilities and distributing power, something no one else could replicate. Pandora smirks slightly, deliberately omitting the fact that her ability also works on the dead and on monsters, not just humans. When Camilla asks if Pandora can steal abilities from monsters with superpowers, Pandora replies that she isn't entirely sure, as she hasn't tested it yet. By the way, about the system you mentioned, I definitely see the advantage of making people more loyal. The problem is, we, or rather you, can't bypass the adaptation period required to use Arcanus. It gets increasingly dangerous the more abilities someone has, says Camilla. At Pandora's prompting, Camilla elaborates, explaining that different Arcanists cause overlapping wavelengths of paranormal energy within the user's body, leading to interference. The more abilities someone possesses, the greater the interference and the higher the risk to their health. This is why no one in their world has more than 4 Arcanists. That's something we'll have to solve, says Pandora. Wait a second. Shouldn't you already be under extreme stress from this? Asks Camilla, suddenly worried. She rushes over to Pandora to check for any signs of health issues. Camilla's hands quickly move over Pandora's body, feeling for anything abnormal. Pandora finds the concern amusing. She's not uncomfortable with it. In fact, it shows her just how deeply Camilla cares for her. For Pandora, having such a devoted, albeit unhinged admirer feels like a stroke of luck. However, Pandora knows there's a risk that Camilla might one day grow dissatisfied with being used. Pandora decides she should address this concern in the near future, though she remains unaware of the thoughts racing through Camilla's mind. I want you. 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 Even if I'm just the fifth wheel, I want to be near you, my love. It would be so wonderful to be used by you. As long as I get my revenge, I don't care if I'm just a tool for you. All that matters is that I stay by your side. Yes, that's it. I'll be your tool, your enforcer, so you can shine in the light and reshape this broken world, thinks Camilla. As Pandora sits quietly, she wonders what else she could say to Camilla and what steps would be necessary to achieve her goals. After some thought, she decides not to go too far just yet, but instead focus on talking about Camilla and her objectives. If you want revenge against your father, Theodore, it might not be the best idea to stay at Helios Academy constantly. After all, he has a good eye on you there, and it will be difficult to carry out our plans if we're both stuck in the same place. So, what should we do about this? Pandora says, well, I could just quit school and do something else, but I don't really have any concrete plans regarding my qualifications to find other work. As a hero, I have 2 fake identities, and I hold doctorates in biology, mechanics, and psychology, Camilla replies. When Pandora learns what a doctorate means, she's quite surprised to find out that Camilla holds 3 of them. Camilla explains how she earned her degrees. At the age of 16, she secretly started studying biology online and worked through her degree as quickly as possible. After obtaining her first doctorate in biology, she repeated the process with other fields. Although Pandora doesn't fully understand how Camilla managed to accomplish all this, she finds her to be highly intelligent. Everything Camilla says rings true to Pandora. If there were any inconsistencies or lies, Pandora's ability would sense it. Not in the traditional way, as with truth or deception, but through a distinct lack of reaction. Yet, throughout their conversation, Pandora hasn't sensed anything false from Camilla. I won't tell her that I'm already at my limit with my Arcanus. I just need to offload any powers I steal in the future. But I can show her that I have a space where I store things. That's not a risk, and it could help us both a lot. Pandora thinks to herself, you want to recruit people into your organization who are willing to kill or perform acts of violence without hesitation, right? If that's the case, I know a few places where you can find plenty of such people. Even if we don't recruit them, it would still be useful to keep these places in mind for the future. They could serve as a buffet for you, Camilla says. What do you mean, Camilla? Pandora asks. I mean prisons. These places are definitely diverse and valuable for someone like you, Camilla replies. Pandora's eyes light up. She hadn't even considered the idea of breaking into a prison to steal powers. Camilla gets up from her lab chair and motions for Pandora to follow her. They walk into another room filled with computers, where Camilla shows her a list of superpowers along with their definitions. Camilla demonstrates how she can click on each power to see its user, their personality, and even their current location. The list is far more detailed than Pandora expected, given that Camilla supposedly gathered this information from the internet. The definitions and probable functions of the abilities are so precise that Pandora can't help but feel impressed. The list includes 1. Berserker. User brain dead. The closer to death, the stronger the body becomes. 2. Hercules 12 labors. User unknown. Physical strength amplified 30 to 50 times that of a normal human. Extreme regeneration, even from fatal injuries. 3. Frozen life. User B-rank hero invincible. Temporary invulnerability lasting from a few minutes to several hours. 4. Ice fire. User Reno hustle. 5. Hot Mojito hustle. 6. Levitation. User, Frank. 7. Queen of Fantasy. User, Helios Academy teacher Riverdale. Allows the creation of a fictional world in which individuals can only escape either by physically moving the user or enduring intense pain within the fictional world. The estimated time limit for usage is between 2 to 3 hours. 8. Block. User, S-rank hero Noel. By uttering a person's name, all Arcanus abilities can be deactivated as long as the user continues to speak or exhale. Pandora doesn't go through the entire list, as it's extremely long. She decides to focus on the most interesting abilities for now, knowing that the digital format allows her to sort and filter the list whenever needed. The hero named Null stands out as one of their greatest obstacles, since his ability can disable any other Arcanus, leaving only magic unaffected. I think I could leave school and work exclusively for you, but the problem is that my ability would still leave a signature that the Hero Association could track over time. I also want to strengthen my power further, Camilla says. I might be able to help with that. I could potentially enhance your ability in the future, but for now, what you really need to focus on, as you know, is control, not power. You already have plenty of it. According to the scale, your ability is strong enough to destroy an entire city or a large part of one. So, mastering the finer details is crucial. I completely agree that, for now, you should stay at Helios Academy and train with me. However, since you don't want to become a hero, I think the plan should be to eventually leave the academy and work for me full-time. We could make a dramatic exit and then focus on taking revenge against your father. It will definitely be interesting when we're finally ready to make him suffer, or whatever you decide to do to him. Just an idea, Pandora says. Camilla agrees with the general idea of pretending to be heroes for now and executing their plans later. She also sees Pandora's point about the importance of mastering her powers. What do you think is going on with those monsters that attacked City A or whatever it was? Camilla asks suddenly. I suspect they're being controlled by someone. It could be a kind of fungal system where one individual controls many. If the control is absolute, the signatures of the various abilities these zombies, or whatever those creatures were, had would all match the same source. From what I understand, it's like one individual with multiple bodies, Pandora says. Yeah, that was my impression too. But I can't shake the feeling that it might have something to do with the Asile clan. If we're assuming they have an ability like the necromancers from stories controlling the dead, it would make sense, Camilla adds. As Pandora and Camilla continued their conversation, exchanging plans and ideas, time seemed to fly by. Soon enough, they prepared to return to the Helios Academy. Pandora, however, had yet to find the right moment to explain the peculiar nature of her pocket dimension to Camilla. Instead of offering an explanation, she simply acted. Without warning, she reached into the air and tore a rift into the fabric of reality itself. The moment Pandora opened the rift, it was as if shards of existence were falling into an infinite abyss of utter darkness, stretched endlessly into the void. The surface of the rift shimmered like the delicate skin of a soap bubble, shifting through the iridescent colors of the rainbow. The edges of the rift seemed almost bizarrely three-dimensional, as though Pandora had indeed punched a hole into reality, like smashing a glass pane that represented the world. Camilla's eyes widened in shock as she beheld the rift. Pandora nonchalantly reached into it, pulling out her winter jacket and slipping it on. She then retrieved a holographic bracelet, strapping it to her wrist, followed by a sandwich, a rustic creation of bread with olive oil, garlic, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, and a mix of fragrant herbs. The only downside to this pocket dimension, Pandora remarked casually, is that time doesn't stop inside it. I wish it did. Do you want something to eat? Pandora asked casually as she bit into her sandwich. Camilla, still staring incredulously at the rift, glanced from Pandora to the swirling anomaly and back again. Her expression said everything. Pandora, noticing her friend's reaction, added with a shrug, I just grabbed some things from the buffet earlier. Camilla furrowed her brow and gestured toward the rift. Hey, you can't just leave something like that hanging in the middle of the room. You can't just rip a hole in reality and not explain it, she protested. Pandora shrugged again, brushing off the concern, and made no effort to elaborate. For a while, silence hung between them, interrupted only by the crunch of snow beneath their feet as they walked. Finally, Camilla broke the quiet. "You know, you could transport some really important stuff with that thing," she said thoughtfully. The two eventually arrived back at the Helios Academy by evening. Fox, as always, was there, exuding his usual irritation, this time at the city residence. Meanwhile, Reno and Frank were in the middle of yet another petty argument, and Mio was still as annoyingly persistent as ever in his attempts to befriend Pandora. That night, as they prepared to sleep, Pandora found herself lost in thought, considering her next steps. One idea stood out. She wanted to visit the Museum of the Paranormal. It seemed like it could be an intriguing way to spend the day, and Pandora was certain it would hold secrets worth uncovering. As she drifted off, her dreams took an unsettling turn. Once again, she felt the strange sensation of something or someone calling out to her. In her dream, she glimpsed a glass orb, and at its center floated a small droplet of crimson blood. The blood seemed to pulsate, surrounded by a faint glow of violet energy. The dream slipped away as quickly as it had come, and moments later, Pandora woke up abruptly. Sitting up in bed, she couldn't help but wonder about the significance of what she had seen. Over breakfast the next morning, Pandora shared her idea about visiting the Museum of the Paranormal. Her future classmates from the first-year combat and heroism class all seemed intrigued. Some were interested in the historical value of such a place, while others simply wanted to pass the time. Pandora found both reasons valid, but kept her true motivation private. She wanted to see if she could absorb any abilities from the museum's relics or artifacts. To Pandora's surprise, Lady Riverdale, her teacher, decided to accompany them on the trip. When Pandora entered the Museum of the Paranormal, she was greeted by an eerie yet fascinating sight. Rows upon rows of skeletal remains and the preserved remnants of monsters. But that wasn't all. There were also bizarre relics and artifacts, their purposes still shrouded in mystery. Lady Riverdale explained that these relics had been discovered near monsters and their habitats. However, their true significance remained unknown. It was the first time Pandora had learned that some monsters apparently used primitive tools made of stone. This revelation sparked an ethical question in her mind. Was it truly justifiable to hunt certain species of monsters? Curious, Pandora asked a few of her classmates about their opinions. To her frustration, the majority seemed to believe that monsters were nothing more than wild creatures that needed to be eradicated. Pandora found the narrow-mindedness of humans insufferable. Pandora placed her hand on the glass display, her fingers brushing against its cold, smooth surface. From somewhere nearby, a faint beeping sound echoed, but she paid it little mind. Her thoughts revolved around the question she had been pondering since entering the museum. Should she steal the ability sealed within this skeletal relic? As she stared at the artifact, Pandora once again noticed how much easier it was to manipulate the abilities of the dead compared to those of the living. It wouldn't even require her to physically touch the skeleton. With her chaos-infused powers, the extraction could be done from a distance, undetectable to those around her. Chaos energy was elusive, an untraceable force that didn't register on conventional scanners or to practitioners of paranormal abilities. But the aftermath was another story. The sudden disappearance of a paranormal ability from a preserved relic might draw suspicion, especially in a place as closely monitored as this museum. The ability itself appeared fragile, like a fading flame surrounded by the decay of time. Pandora reasoned that waiting until nightfall to return might be the wiser option. For now, discretion was her ally. "You're not supposed to touch the display cases," a man in a suit barked, his voice sharp and reprimanding. "Sorry," Pandora replied with a sheepish smile, pulling her hand away. "I was just fascinated by the monsters and their strength." She rejoined her classmates, walking behind them while mulling over her plan. Despite the minor setback, she appreciated the Helios Academy's efforts to keep their students engaged with unique events during the break. Without such activities, her days would have been dreadfully dull. As the group moved through the museum, Pandora couldn't help but notice a pattern. Only the most formidable monsters retained traces of their abilities long after death. It was a tantalizing discovery that further fueled her curiosity. However, her interest extended beyond the skeletons and relics. One person in particular caught her attention: Victor, the bearer of the Arcanus ability Omni Healing, a C-rank power from the support class. Seizing the moment, Pandora turned to Camilla. "Do you remember asking me why I find Chaos Zones fascinating?" she asked, her tone casual yet deliberate. Camilla frowned slightly, confused. "I don't recall asking that." "Well," Pandora continued without missing a beat, "it's because those zones are where monsters are born. There's something captivating about the mystery of Chaos Zones. I'd love to see a map of where they all are someday." Camilla's eyes widened slightly as understanding dawned. She quickly realized that Pandora wasn't merely sharing a random thought. This was a veiled request. Camilla played along seamlessly. "Yeah, that would be interesting," she replied, her tone light. "I'll see if I can put something like that together." Their subtle exchange was a practiced art, an unspoken language they had perfected. Camilla gave Pandora's hand a discreet double squeeze, signaling that she understood the hidden message. A single squeeze would have meant she didn't understand and needed clarification later. The rest of the museum visit passed uneventfully. Neo tried several times to strike up a conversation with Pandora, but Camilla's possessiveness was unyielding, and she shooed him away each time. By the end of the day, Pandora had identified 5 intriguing abilities among the relics. Later that evening, while her classmates played card games, chatted, or watched a series, Victor stepped outside for a cigarette. The young man, whose healing abilities had earned him attention from guilds and noble hero families alike, lit the first cigarette with a practiced hand. Smoking was a habit he knew was unhealthy, but his powers allowed him to heal the damage almost instantly. For him, the act was less about the nicotine and more about the calming ritual it provided. As the cold night air bit at his skin, Victor decided to stretch his legs. He wandered across the academy grounds, imagining how beautiful the area would look in the summer. But then, an unsettling feeling washed over him. He was being watched. A high-pitched sound, barely audible, reached his ears. Victor turned toward the source of the noise, his heightened senses on high alert. But the darkness revealed nothing. His ability to heal had pushed his body slightly beyond human limits, sharpening his senses and endurance. Yet even so, he couldn't pinpoint the threat. The feeling of danger grew stronger. Then, without warning, something struck him. A searing force engulfed him, a blaze of dark turquoise and pale blue flames, unnaturally hot and unlike anything he had encountered before. A scream tore through the night, echoing across the academy grounds. Pandora shot up at the sound, her heart racing. Instinctively, she knew this was something she couldn't ignore. Without hesitation, she leapt out the window of her dormitory and sprinted through the snow, guided by the faint scent of charred wood and burnt flesh. She had been restless anyway, unable to sleep, and now she had a purpose. As Pandora approached the scene, the acrid smell grew stronger, making her stomach churn. When she finally arrived, the sight before her made her breath catch in her throat. The scent of burnt wood mingles with the sickly sweet stench of charred flesh and a sharp electrical tang, something akin to ozone. The cold, metallic smell of ozone lingers heavily in the air, a smell Pandora struggles to describe, though it evokes a sense of raw energy and icy precision. Without hesitation, she calls her teacher, Riverdale, her voice hastily recounting what she sees, her nerves on edge at the thought that the attacker might still be nearby. "Stay calm and describe everything you see, Pandora," Riverdale instructs her firmly. 10 minutes later, half the school is awake, the area cordoned off as police begin their investigation. Pandora is questioned for the 3rd time, yet she still cannot make sense of what happened or its implications. She feels just as unsettled as before, grappling with the question of why someone would murder a student at one of the most secure schools in the country. Initial analyses of the residual signature of the paranormal power used to ignite the fire indicate that it is not linked to anyone at the school. However, as the possibility exists that the signature has been distorted over time since the attack, a comparison is still underway. The process accounts for the fact that individuals with multiple abilities often produce entirely unique signatures when using them in combination, distinct from when they use each ability individually. Pandora undergoes the same scrutiny, but the sensors detect no match, as her plasma ability combined with her physical enhancement would generate a signature far removed from anything resembling fire. Pandora is less affected by the death of the student itself, someone she had never spoken to, than by the unnerving realization that a murder could occur in such a heavily secured environment. Her connection to the victim is non-existent, leaving her with no emotional attachment. Nonetheless, the sheer audacity and implications of the attack gnaw at her. She barely sleeps that night, her mind racing. The following morning, the murder remains the main topic of discussion among students and staff. Investigators conclude that none of the publicly known members of the Hustle family, known for their fire-related superpowers, are responsible. However, the family has a few obscure members who might not appear on anyone's radar. Days pass, and the crime scene is eventually cleared. Pandora and Camilla discuss the murder and its possible significance for them, but ultimately, no new clues surface. Even the superhero investigators capable of peering into the past or uncovering hidden traces find the incident too distant to analyze. While there are individuals with remarkable skills in solving such cases, the world is vast, and they cannot be everywhere at once. The school year begins under the shadow of the attack, the tragedy casting a somber tone over the campus. Security measures are tightened, and the teachers reassure the students that such an incident will not happen again. Meanwhile, Mesos and Lady Riverdale meet in an office to discuss the lingering mystery of the murder. The most perplexing aspect, Riverdale begins, is that we detected paranormal energy from the attacker, but none from the victim. Mesos leans back, his expression grim. The devices we use to measure paranormal energy aren't perfectly accurate. By now, it's too late to determine whether the victim's ability was still active or had vanished. The constant use of Arcanus in the vicinity creates interference, making investigations even more challenging. And it's not like we can forbid everyone from using their powers to get a clearer reading. He sighs and continues, even if everyone had stopped using their abilities, the residual interference from overlapping paranormal signatures would have lingered for days. By then, the faint signature of a C-rank Arcanus would have naturally degraded to the level of D rank, or even E rank. It wasn't worth pursuing further because it would have yielded nothing concrete. And let's say we had discovered that his ability had vanished. What would that even tell us? We don't fully understand how superpowers work, especially how they behave post-mortem. Every ability reacts differently after death. It's far too unpredictable to draw definitive conclusions. Riverdale nods slowly, her frustration evident. You're right. Measuring and analyzing paranormal energy has always been a near impossible task. Mesos adds, this case would have been easier to solve if it had been a straightforward fight, two combatants clashing, leaving clear evidence. But this wasn't a fight. This was an ambush, a single devastating attack. From what we've pieced together, the victim didn't stand a chance. He lost half his lower body in one strike. Riverdale sighs in resignation, rising from her seat. I understand. It was just a thought, but I need to focus on my class now. She bids Mesos farewell, leaving the room with the weight of unanswered questions still heavy on her mind. And that brings us to the end of Pandora, The Eternal War, Part 15. I hope you enjoyed this chapter of the story and found it as intriguing to follow as I did narrating and creating it. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like, share, and recommend it to others who might enjoy this kind of storytelling. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the aftermath of the murder at Helios Academy, uncover more about the mysterious Asile clan, and explore their next moves. The mystery surrounding the clan is about to get even more intense, so be sure to tune in. Before you go, you'll find the playlist for Pandora, The Eternal War on the right side of your screen. If you're new here or missed any parts, feel free to click and catch up on the full story. And on the left, you'll see a link to the latest video I've uploaded. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, which you can find at the top center of your screen. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.